One final road game for Penn State as the Nittany Lions play Rutgers, seeking a third straight win this afternoon. Does James Franklin remain unbeaten against the Scarlet Knights? If so, he'll join a major career milestone. We'll discuss that on today's show. Plus, we're looking at the bowl picture, how analysts and analytics don't quite see eye to eye on the CFP and where the Nittany Lions could land. And Anderly takes a look at last week's emotional pregame tribute where defensive lineman Devon Ellis carried the American flag onto the field and presented it to his father. Penn State's game plan as it heads into the final weeks comes straight from Bachman-Turner Overdrive. Taking care of business. The Nittany Lions have done it the past 2 weeks. Do they continue to cruise to the finish line today? We'll find out this afternoon. Let's get you ready for kickoff right here on Nittany Nation Game Day.
Brisk one across Pennsylvania this Saturday.
Welcome inside Nittany Nation Studio. I'm Andrew Clay. She is Anderly Penwell. One final road game for Penn State as the Nittany Lions head to Rutgers.
On paper, obviously not a really big game, but a major milestone sits ahead of head coach James Franklin, who will be going for his 100th career win this afternoon. Of Franklin's 99 career wins, 75 come from his time with Penn State and all at the FBS level. And with the win on Saturday, Franklin would be the 7th fastest to reach that milestone amongst active FBS coaches. He joined Kirk Ferentz, Pat Fitzgerald, Brett Bielema, and Jim Harbaugh is the 5th active Big Ten coach with 100-plus wins.
But I'm looking forward to kind of the direction we're going and really what we have done. If you look at the entire picture, I'm pretty proud. Obviously, there's some things that we need to do better and I need to do better and all those things, but the overall body of work, I'm pretty proud of.
James Franklin's teams do very well against Rutgers. It's one of just 3 Big Ten schools Coach has never lost to, Purdue and Wisconsin being the other 2. In fact, the Nittany Lions haven't lost to Rutgers since 1988, and last year Penn State shut out the Knights despite missing a handful, I should say, of players who were sidelined with a flu-like illness.
The flu game. The
flu game, absolutely. Penn State's own flu game. And really, I think Penn State is in a really interesting position in this game with 2 games to go. 10-2 is very much attainable, and so is a New Year's Six Bowl, but most of that is out of their control.
Many of the latest bowl projections have the Nittany Lions going to the Citrus and missing out on a New Year's Six. But like last week, Penn State is still locked into the Rose Bowl if things ended today.
Yeah, there's some ambiguity into whether or not the Rose Bowl would have to select Penn State, but traditionally they do take the next man up, and in this case, it's the Nittany Lions. Obviously, getting 2 Big Ten teams into the college football playoffs is the real challenge here, and while many experts don't see it, ESPN's analytics actually favor it. ESPN's playoff predictor gives Ohio State a 73% chance to make the CFP even if the Buckeyes lose to Michigan and don't make the Big Ten title game. ESPN gives Michigan a 57% chance in that exact same situation.
Still, for any of that to matter, Penn State has to beat Rutgers and Michigan State first. There has been a lull in the schedule down from that stretch, boring for fans who've kind of written off the season, but it's a point for players. One former guide said no.
I don't ever remember there being not an important game. I just don't think that's a mentality. It's still, you're still going out there and having to put it on the line, and so I don't expect to see that. And if you do, that's when upsets happen. So I wouldn't expect to see that.
That's former Nittany Lion Justin Krupakis. He played in the NFL for a few seasons, and he was our guest on Nittany Nation Overtime. You can check that show Sunday nights following the WTAJ News at 11. And if you don't pick that up station, we'll drop it in podcast form on Monday mornings.
Joey Porter Jr. missed last week's game with appendicitis, and his status this week remains unclear. After initially saying Porter was out with a non-football related injury, Coach James Franklin expanded upon that on Tuesday. The corner was not active in the portion of practice available to the media this week. Looking around the NFL, Adrian Amos recorded his first sack and 9 tackles in the Packers' win over Dallas last week. Jahan Dotson grabbed the one pass in his return from injury in the Commanders' upset over the Philadelphia Eagles. And Trace McSorley saw the field in relief of an injured Colt McCoy in the Cardinals' win. McCoy and starter Kyler Murray did return to practice this week. The Cardinals won't play until Monday night.
And remember, you can stay up to date on all things Nittany Nation using our Nittany Nation app. That QR code right there on your screen will take you to download it and get the latest news, scores, and stats right there on your phone.
When we come back, we'll revisit last week's win and look at how one of the hottest Nittany Lions is flying way under the radar.
Plus, last Saturday, Devon Ellis carried the American flag onto the field where he honored his dad. We'll look back at that emotional moment when we return.
You're watching Nittany Nation Game Day.
A week ago, 7 sacks and Nick Singleton stole the show against Maryland. The freshman rushed for a pair of scores, both coming on 4th down. This second one saw him swatting a defender like I swat mosquitoes in the summer. Singleton eclipsed the 100-yard mark for the 3rd time this season in the win.
The other thing to watch that game was the umbrellas and the raincoats and the rain boots. And everything rain related.
Oh, did it rain?
Just a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Our cameras were fine, so that's all that mattered.
Well, Annalie, I can't see why Penn State wouldn't lean on the rush yet again today in Piscataway.
A couple trends worth noting. Penn State has attempted 40-plus carries in back-to-back weeks, something they've only done 3 total times this year. The Nittany Lions have also scored 6 of its last 9 touchdowns on the ground, and I wouldn't see any reason to change that against Rutgers. The Scarlet Knights are not defending the run very well, giving up 4.8 yards per carry against Big Ten teams, and they are last in the conference at 17 touchdowns. That sets up another big afternoon for Penn State freshmen Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. Singleton's on track to be the team's first 1,000-yard runner this season since Miles Sanders back in 2018.
After watching the game, Nick's vision has gotten incredibly better. His patience, hitting the holes better instead of trying to force a play. I think that has increased tremendously. We have 2 backs that are learning as the season go on and still have much to learn from. And their potential is extremely high.
It's amazing where this Penn State run game is after its struggles last season. Penn State finished next to last in the conference in rushing a year ago. Penn State was 118th nationally in rushing yards per game. This year, Penn State's 4th in the Big Ten and a 4.7 yards per carry. They're 34th in the nation in that category, and that's a massive improvement from a team that just quite frankly could not run the ball in 2021. Well, following that win, Penn State took home a couple Big Ten weekly awards, including the Special Team Player of the Week. Senior Jake Pinniger connected on all 3 field goals last week, including a 50-yarder for the 2nd consecutive week. Since the beginning of Big Ten play, Pinniger has converted 8 straight field goals. Well, in this week's Nittany Notes, Manny Diaz was named a Broyles Award semifinalist, given to the college football's top assistant. James Franklin said Wednesday Christian Driver will switch from defensive back to wide receiver. His dad, Donald, was a 5-time Pro Bowler at that position.
And James coached him.
James did coach him. And Nevada announced a matchup against Penn State coming up in 2025. Well, military tributes are commonplace these days at college sporting events, but Penn State's take on them is one of the cooler versions, Annerly.
On Military Appreciation Day, a player runs out of the tunnel carrying the American flag and takes it over to a family member who was served. Last week, defensive lineman Devon Ellis honored his father in a moment the two won't soon forget. American flags are a common sight at college football games. But last week, a rain-soaked flag at Beaver Stadium was extra special.
You know, military families go through a lot every year.
On Military Appreciation Day, redshirt junior defensive tackle Devon Ellis led the Nittany Lions onto the field and presented the flag to his father, Sean.
And you know, my father sacrificed so much for us. So it'll be like a really cool thing to carry the flag out and show our appreciation for him.
My heart is pounding. Being a parent in the stands is a little different, but being on the field, being honored by him, getting issued the flag is amazing.
Retired Sergeant First Class Sean Thomas served in the U.S. Army for 25 years. He made sacrifices not only for his country, but also for his family. While Devon was in high school, Sean relocated to California and insisted his family stay behind in Maryland, where they had better opportunities.
I'm happy that he understood what I had to do, what I wanted to do for him. I want to make sure he had the best opportunities. And maybe as a parent, that was my primary goal for my kids, make sure they was okay.
From across the country, the two bonded over their love of football.
And that's what the game did for us. It's really brought us together.
Which made this moment on a rainy Saturday in Happy Valley all the more special.
It was a proud moment because he endured a lot. Not necessarily about me, it was about him. It was how much he's endured with me being gone a lot. And how his mom really took a lot of the helm in raising him. The fact that I was gone so long. So it was the fact that he's here, became an amazing young man.
I will always forever appreciate my father for that, just because I don't know if I would be here if we had to make that change, but he sacrificed his time and everything else pretty much so that we can succeed in what we were doing. So I think for him, this is like well-deserved. This is a testament to all his work.
A very cool story. Thank you very much, Anderly. Coming up after a quick break, we go one-on-one with Tom Hannafin to break down the Scarlet Knights.
But first, let's check in with Joe Murgo for our game day forecast. Joe?
Hey guys, the Nittany Lions are leaving the confines of Beaver Stadium, heading over to New Jersey to take on Rutgers. 3:30 kickoff. It's going to be mostly sunny for a kickoff. A chilly wind. Temperatures will be in the 30s and dropping down through the 30s with a mostly clear sky. So overall, the weather not bad. That wind, though, will eat into you a little bit.
You're watching Nittany Nation Game Day.
Well, back here on Nittany Nation Game Day, we now go one-on-one with Tom Hannafin, co-host of Pay Dirt, a Penn State football show. He hosts that each week with former Nittany Lion quarterback Matt McGloin. They've got preview shows and post-game shows, so you want to check that out wherever you get your podcast. Tom, I appreciate you coming on. Let's talk about Rutgers. Let's get business out of the way. First things first, is there any chance Penn State is on upset alert this weekend?
Nope. Penn State is favored by -19 according to the spread on the road at Rutgers. I expect them to cover that very, very easily. Listen, this is just a bad Rutgers team. They're 4-6. They've lost 6 of their last 7 games. Granted, they played Michigan State very tight last week, but that is not a great Spartan defense. And they were able to rip off quite a bit on the ground. As a matter of fact, running back Kyle Monungai had 162 yards rushing. That is his career best. The best he'd had before that was 77 back in October of 2021. So I really don't expect to see a repeat performance in that respect from Rutgers. They have a young quarterback named Gavin Wimsatt, who is promising but still young, about 50% completion percentage, more picks than touchdowns. So I don't see enough on the Rutgers side to make Penn State really worried this Saturday.
Okay, now we get all the formalities out of the way. Penn State is going to be favored against Rutgers, obviously, as you said today, and then next week against Michigan State. So I know we don't want to count our W's before the clock hits 0, but could you grade a 10-2 season? Is that a success because Penn State is still void of really that marquee win?
I consider it a success because coming into this season, personally, I was thinking Penn State would fall somewhere between 6-6 or 8-4. So for you to knock off every other bit of competition in the Big Ten and non-conference, for that matter, and only fall to Michigan and Ohio State, there's really no shame in losing to those teams. Now, I understand the mentality of Penn State football fans is that, yes, Penn State should be able to beat one or both of Michigan and Ohio State and should be able to get into the college football playoff or national championship discussion. You're being very unrealistic. If you looked at the roster coming into this season and you thought Penn State was able to contend for a national championship, 10-2 is a step in the right direction. Let's not forget, between 2020 and 2021, this team was perfectly 500. So yes, that is an improvement, is a step in the right direction. And based on the pieces on both offense and defense that are there for the future, I really think that game against Maryland was a glimpse into what Penn State's future can be, and it's very, very promising.
Who is one player that you don't think we have talked enough about throughout the season?
Hakeem Beamon. Just about every single game, he's making some sort of big play. Is he necessarily dominant yet? No, I don't necessarily think he's a guy who's winning tons and tons of one-on-one battles, but he's really starting to develop into the player that a lot of people have thought he could be. And let's look at the defensive line position altogether. There's about a dozen players on the Penn State roster that everybody's been saying, just wait until they get healthy. Just wait until they get their playing spot. I look at Adisa Isaac, Tarbert, and a lot of people are talking about Denai Dennis Sutton and Zane Duran as young freshmen who are going to do something big down the line. But Hakeem Beamon next to P.J. Mustipher has really benefited and turned into a solid piece.
One final question for you, Tom, before we let you go. The college football playoff has a weird importance in Happy Valley right now because it is the difference between potentially going to the Rose Bowl and potentially not, and going to another, maybe even not New Year's Six Bowl. So, Tom, I ask you, who are your top 4 teams in the country right now?
Now, and first of all, Penn State fans should be wanting to get to the college football playoff, whether it's 4 teams or 12 teams. Like, that should be the goal every single year for the Penn State football team. My top 4 teams in the country, I still give a lot of credit to what Tennessee is able to be. So I go with, in no particular order, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and Tennessee. No disrespect to TCU. I do not think they can hang with the SEC superpowers, nor the upper echelon of the Big Ten. I didn't really feel all that inspired by what they did in Austin, Texas against the Longhorns. A lot of people found that to be a justifying statement game. I found it to be underwhelming because if you go up against some of the firepower that Tennessee can provide, some of the firepower that Georgia can provide on offense and defense, plus how physical Michigan can be and what the Buckeyes do on offense, I don't see TCU hanging. So those are my top 4.
2 Big Ten teams in the college football playoff would be very big for the Nittany Lion fans as they hope to get out to Pasadena. He's Tom Hannafin, co-host of Pay Dirt, a Penn State football show. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. Tom, I appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, it's time to wrap up this show. We're doing something new. One bold prediction coming up after the break.
Watch Nittany Nation Game Day on these great stations every week. WFXP in Erie, WHTM in Harrisburg, WPHL in Philadelphia, WYOU in Wilkes-Barre, DC News Now in Washington, and WTAJ in Altoona.
You're watching Nittany Nation Game Day.
Let's go back to 2014, Penn State versus Rutgers, down 10-0 at half. Penn State scored 13 unanswered to come back and beat Rutgers for head coach James Franklin's first Big Ten victory. Bill Belton scored the Nittany Lions' only touchdown, while Christian Hackenberg threw for 300 yards in the win.
He looks exactly the same.
He does, and Coach has had a
James.
lot of wins since. As we pointed out at the top of this show, Coach Franklin sits at 99 career wins, looking for number 100 today. And early, let's wrap up this show a little differently this week and try something new. But before we get to one bold prediction, give me our key to the game.
For me, my key is don't fix what ain't broke. We got to run the ball against Rutgers. We talked about it earlier in the show, how the Scarlet Knights struggle containing the rush, and it's been a strength of the season that's progressed for the Nittany Lions, and I look for another big day from the freshman running backs.
Something new here. One bold prediction. It's self-explanatory what we're doing here. Rutgers, they're going to turn it over a few times in this game. This game will be a sellout. That doesn't happen that often at Piscataway. They'll be jazzed up, and an inexperienced quarterback, it's going to lead to a few sloppy plays, a few turnovers. I'm going to say 3 turnovers. Tig Brown gets an interception. One big prediction.
I like it. Now let's take a look. A lot of other games around the Big Ten. 4 of them are at noon. Illinois travels to Ann Arbor to take on number 3 Michigan. Wisconsin and Nebraska square off from Lincoln, and Northwestern takes on Purdue. Now, along with Indiana and Michigan for that one. Along with Penn State and Rutgers at 3:30, number 2 Ohio State takes on Maryland, and then at 4 in the Twin Cities we got Iowa and Minnesota.
Should be a good matchup. Penn State is a near 20-point favorite in this one, Anderly, and they've recorded 6 wins of 19 or more points. We'll see if that rings true today. Kickoff is on the Big Ten Network at 3:30, but for us, we're plumb out of time. I said it. For Anderly Penwell, I'm Andrew Clay. Thanks for watching.